Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! I've scored! They've scored! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Overcome seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. We're going to dig down a little bit more into the two groups that are going to be playing in Seattle. Of course, there's the Sounders group. Before we get into the Sounders group, let's talk about this other Seattle group. And to help me do that is two people who I'm super excited to bring in. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of having them both on the podcast at the same time, but they have both been on the podcast. First is Charlie Boehm. You know him as a national freelance writer. He does most of his stuff over at MLSsoccer.com. And then I also have Richard Farley, who may be our most frequent guest on Nos Arietes, but we haven't had him on for a long time. But he's a former SB Nation colleague of mine. Both these guys know what they're talking about. The teams that are playing here are Urawa Red Diamonds, who are the biggest team in Japan. Inter Milan, who is a pretty damn big club as well. And then I guess Monterey is in that group, but they aren't playing any games in Seattle. And then River Plate, which is of course one of the two massive clubs in Argentina. You guys have both done a little bit of writing on these teams for previews that we'll have coming out on Sounder at Heart relatively soon. I'll just ask you. I'll start with you, Charlie. Who do you find to be the most interesting team in this group?
I think I have to start with River Plate because the tradition, the culture, the support that they have. I mean, you know, the footage coming out of a Monumental, their home stadium down in Buenos Aires, is always spectacular. This is one of the clubs I would contend that sort of shows the world like what true hardcore fandom looks like and what a devoted fan really looks like in our sport. And so in spite of so many economic difficulties, sort of chronic headwinds in Argentina, the really just brutal need that they, limitations that they face domestically that force their players to go abroad, they continue to be an elite club and be competitive. I mean, they have good and bad years and good and bad phases of leadership, but it's still sort of just one of those really short list clubs that if you get a chance to go see them, I think you can be assured that you're going to see quality on the pitch, and it'll help you understand how Argentina is true soccer royalty and why the national team is so good. And then you'll see the culture in the stands. I mean, they'll travel from all over the US and Canada, I would expect, and beyond to support their team. And so I think that's where it starts for me. And I could say a lot of nice things about Monterrey as well. I think that's an extremely well-run organization and a chronically successful Liga MX club. But River Plate is just that's just bucket list stuff. I think as long as you can get a good discount on those tickets, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can get tickets right now for like $25 to see them play Red Diamonds in that I think it was it's a Tuesday game at noon. I'm actually planning on playing hooky that day to go to the game just because I'm fascinated by there's a video that's circulating of the farewell that Red Diamonds got from their fans that is frankly unbelievable. I mean, it's just a sea of red of people that are sort of giving them this farewell. So I'm really hopeful that even if the casual fan doesn't show up for that game, that there's some good traveling support, because it seems like it's going to be super interesting. Do you have a team though that kind of piques your interest out of this group, Richard?
It's also River Plate. I think the River Monterrey matchup is probably going to define this group. Although Inter is another team where coaching change, oldest team in Champions League competition. How serious are they really going to take this tournament coming off of what happened to them against PSG? But kind of to build off of what Charles was saying, he talked about the culture around River Plate, and no matter who would be in the actual uniforms, River Plate would be an experience to engage in no matter what. But River Plate has a couple of MLS hooks. Their coach is Marcelo Gallardo, who used to be with DC United, spent a couple years there. He is being described as one of these very modern head coaches who a possession style. We want to have we want to have 70% of the possession. They lead Argentina in possession, passes, short passes, all that kind of stuff. They also have Sebastian Juicy, who returned to Argentina, I guess it would be 2 years ago at this point, and he is their starting 9. They have Leandro Gonzalez Perez too, although he's more of a bench player for them at this point in his career. He's 33 at this point. But between their style of play, a couple of MLS hooks, and the fact that they have a legitimate chance to be the best non-European team in this competition, I think. I don't think that they're better than the Brazilian teams, but you look at their Copa Lib results over the last 4 years, they're right there competing with those Brazilian teams. Between this group and their talent level, I think that they have a chance. And they've low-key over the last 3 years brought back 7 players from Europe who are all starting for their teams in Europe. They had to pay transfer fees for them. So just a couple days ago, they confirmed that Real Madrid had hit the sell clause on their 17-year-old right-wing superstar, Franco Manstantuano. So that's $45 million coming in. And it's the third time, it's actually the fourth time in the last 4 years that they've had this kind of sale. They've sold a midfielder named Claudio Echeverri to Manchester City for $35 million last year. They sold Enzo Fernandez onto Europe to Benfica at the time, I believe, for $45 million. And then they sold Julian Alvarez to Manchester City before that for like $25 million. They are raking in the money. They have solved the finance problem that so many Argentine teams had been facing. And they are consistently selling their 17 to 19-year-old talents and bringing back 24 to 28-year-old players. Amongst those 7 people they brought back from Europe, only 2 of them are over 30 years old. They're bringing back players in their prime to River. And I think that's why River hasn't failed to reach the knockout stages in Copa Lib in 11 years, which is something because Boca didn't even reach the group stage this year. They went out the preliminary rounds. So wow. River low-key has done a full circle since they were relegated 14 years ago. They become a model team in that part of the world.
They got relegated, and then that was the year where they expanded the Argentine Premier League, right, in order to keep them from actually staying in the second division.
I can't remember the timing on it, but I remember them talking as if they were going to fast track that. They did have to go down to the second division. They actually got a couple of prominent European players. I don't know if anybody remembers the former France striker, David Trezeguet. He actually went and joined River in the second division. And then one of the best players in Russia at the time was a number 10 named Alejandro Dominguez. And he came back from Russia to join them. It was very much like when Juventus went down and some key Juventus players like Gigi Buffon just stayed with the team out of pride. River went down and a couple of people came back. Trezeguet's case, not come back, but came to the team. We're like, we want to be part of rewriting the history here. But then shortly after that, that's when Argentina started really messing with this league, which I find really fun. And it's also kind of like thumbing a nose at people that are so upset about MLS's model. It's like, hey, you want to see what a big mess of a league looks like? Let's go to Argentina.
Well, and I may be getting my relegations mixed up, but I'm pretty sure that was Matias Almeida. Again, always an MLS link up these days. Matias Almeida, Pelado, that was his first number one managerial job. Was he led River Plate back from the second division in 2012. So the Pelado legend began before San Jose Earthquakes, before Chivas. There was his time at River Plate. So.
Yeah, so I'm just a lot. In addition to then the team being good, having a lot of talent, there are like a lot of small MLS hooks into River, which is kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. I think one of the most fascinating things about the entire Argentine league is all of a sudden it felt like they were flush with money, and it seemed like that was also the league where during COVID there was this real existential fear that you were going to have all these teams crumbling and falling apart, and yet somehow they got flush again, which I guess that would if they're selling all kinds of players to Europe, I guess that would explain it.
Yeah, I think unless you're like one of the top 4 or 5 teams in Brazil, you got to come to grips with the reality, right? And that's why in looking into River over these last few weeks, I've been very impressed that in the early 2000s and maybe even before COVID, there was this real kind of like, no, like we're a real football nation. We shouldn't have to do this. We're not subservient to anybody, which is an understandable way to look at the world. But now that the reality has kind of set in, and you're not just seeing teams like River just sell to Europe. They're selling to Brazil. Occasionally, like MLS will dip down there. And then in turn, they're able to take that money and dip back. Like Ezekiel Barco is somebody that was sold to MLS, brought back by River, and he's since been sold to Spartak Moscow. And in those transactions, River made like $4 or $5 million off of that. So they've become just like a real kind of, I don't know, they're kind of day traders in the global stock market.
Yeah, you love that. You love that. All right. Is there a player that is in this group that you really think is worth paying attention to?
Charles, you can go first.
Ooh, hold on. Let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, I could think of a couple. What I will focus on, we'll stick with our good friends Rayados, who again I think they've broken a lot of MLS hearts in CCC and TCL over the years, but nonetheless, they're always competitive, often enjoyable to watch. They have done something comparable to what Richard just described with River Plate, with bringing back top players, Mexican players who go to Europe maybe and don't quite catch on, or looking for something better. And then in combination with also the recruitment from Argentina and South America that is sort of the shortcut for competitiveness in Mexico. So I think they're going to play good soccer. I mean, the headliner is going to be Sergio Ramos, which it's pretty, I mean, again, I think it's pretty fun to see this guy who's now 39 years old, who's won everything there is to win. And he's left the continent, his home continent, and gone on this Mexican adventure. So I think that he's going to draw headlines, but there's players like Carlos Salcedo, Herman Berterame, Jesus Corona, who I think are just super technical, fun players to watch, have that aggressive mentality, both individually and collectively, that distinguishes the top Mexican teams. I mean, if anybody remembers what Cruz Azul did to Vancouver Whitecaps last week in the CCC final, there's this thing that happens when good Mexican teams get on top of you. And it's just like an avalanche. I mean, they sniff blood. They can tear you open and end a game in a matter of minutes, right? And I think that's going to be much harder to do in the level of opposition they'll have in the Club World Cup. But I guess I've had to develop a initially grudging, but now open respect for that sort of facet of the Mexican mentality and the style that they play, where they can be so expressive and yet so direct and devastatingly effective with the sort of deployment of the skill. And so they've been given a sort of effective home base of the Rose Bowl. I'm sure they're hoping to draw the big crowds of expatriates from Southern California. and maybe something fun will take shape there.
Monterrey has the player that I'm most interested into is Sergio Canales, and it's the combination of him on a Dame Torrent team. And so this is me being a little bit MLS pilled, but it's like the way that Torrent wants to play and having that number 10 that can be the complete engine, and then just seeing just having flashbacks of Maxi Morales' prime days for NYCFC. But Canales is just one of these players, not quite like Sergio Ramos, but you do have to kind of pause and go like, this guy's really playing like here, like close to home. And the other one is, for me, is Lautaro Martinez for Inter. So Lautaro Martinez had the most goals in the recent Copa America, but he's more associated with not performing in the World Cup that Argentina won and not performing well in the 2 Champions League finals that Inter has gotten to. So I'm wondering if he has a good tournament, if people are going to ignore that, or they'll say that he finally performed on the big stage, even though he has performed on big stages before.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Hacks and Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Hacks and Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at hacksandferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to hacksandferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Hacks and Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Sounder at Heart's Club World Cup coverage is being sponsored by realtor Marnie O'Shan. Yes, that's my sister. With 20 plus years in marketing, business, and negotiation, and an MBA from UW, Marnie O'Shan helps homebuyers and investors make smart, informed real estate decisions. From first homes to 1031 exchanges and developmental deals, she offers expert guidance backed by financial insight and local market knowledge. Expertise in new construction and well-versed on all types of real estate, she'd like to talk to you about your goals and is here to help you move forward with confidence. While I'm obviously not an impartial observer, I can tell you that I have referred both friends and family to Marnie, and she's helped them get what they were looking for at prices they wanted to pay. You can reach her at marnieoshanhomes.com. That's MarnieOshanHomes.com, or email her at marnie@windermere.com. All right, so if you guys could attend one of these games, is there one that you look at and you go, yeah, that's the game for me?
It's River Monterrey for me.
I'm going to go with Milan versus River.
And those are both at the Rose Bowl?
Milan River is in Seattle. That's on June 25th.
Oh, shoot. That's right. Good shout.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you out for that one.
Let's go.
I believe he pitched that also. You need to check your email, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's sell some houses, people. Let's go. Come on.
Exactly.
The fact that Monterey River is going to be in LA is a big thing for me, though.
Yeah. And it's interesting that it's going to be at the Rose. Well, I guess it's not that interesting. I guess the reason it's at the Rose Bowl and not at SoFi is because of the whole expansion of the state. Like, because SoFi is still hosting the World Cup games, right?
I think so.
Yeah. After some brinksmanship on both sides, they are following through. My guess is too, the Rose Bowl must be they must offer good rates or something. They must be very competitive. And with so many stadiums scattered around greater LA.
Right. Yeah. That's a fair point. All right. So moving over to the Sounders group, other than the Sounders, obviously, who do you think is the most? This is a group that includes PSG, Atletico Madrid, and Botafogo. It is two of the most storied teams in Europe. The most recent Copa Libertadores, they're still the reigning champions of Copa Libertadores in Botafogo. This is really a stacked group. But is there one team in here that you find particularly interesting?
I think I find them all interesting in their own way.
I would say the same. I mean, PSG are it's easy, right? I mean, there's a real redemption story there. As unlikable as they may be to many neutrals, just because of the sports washing project. Let's be frank, that's happened there with a sovereign wealth fund kicking in effectively unlimited resources. I think it's deeply ironic and also revealing that as much money as they spent on crop after crop of veteran stars, big names, we're talking about, billions of dollars spent on Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Leo Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe, of course, which is the no-brainer. But it's not until they truly dived into their incredible reserves of local talent in and around Greater Paris that they found a true identity. It worked in terms of getting over the hump and winning Champions League, which was always the goal of that project. And it gave them something that made them compelling in a way that they simply weren't before. And I've been reading the coverage of, of course, doing it as emphatically as they did in the final will help as well. But to read some of the old heads of European soccer journalism, in some cases grudgingly having to give PSG their props for the style with which they've done this and the redemptive aspects. I mean, Luis Enrique I find him a deeply intriguing and likable character in general. So, that's a factor as well. But we're still like, that's an easy one, right? Atletico Madrid is an incredible story into themselves, because you're talking about an entity that over a generation now has painstakingly and there's been some murky foreign capital that has sped it along too, to some extent, but painstakingly carved out an identity of their own and forced a long bipolar league to be something else, right? To put themselves in the conversation that they weren't born into, that they didn't really have the ancestral right to, and to have the stability they've had with Cholo Simeone being in the managerial spot for so long. I know they've had a little bit of, there's an interesting process here in terms of trying to evolve from being this tenacious, defensive, fundamentally sort of reactive identity as a defensive titan to trying to be something a little bit more without losing what they had. I find that all very compelling, and I'm still would have lots of nice things and interesting things to say about Botafogo after all that.
Yeah, Botafogo and Seattle both got really hard done by this, because PSG just made this best claim you can to being the best club team in the world. And Atletico is a team that in any given year, they could win La Liga. Like, they don't do it that often, but every year they compete in one of the top two leagues in the world. So, I mean, Botafogo might have got drawn into a group with two of the top 7 or 8 teams in the world. The thing with me, I don't want to be too cliched about it, but it does seem like Diego Simeone fits the bill of like the one manager most likely to take this tournament insanely seriously. And then I go, oh, come on, that's just too easy. That's too lazy. Like, this guy's the next player. He knows that the guys can't hit the gas pedal the whole time. And then I remember his son. His son has ascended to being a starting striker for the team and is one of the most annoying players in the world. He is the guy that tries too hard in the pickup game, that is always in your face. He is a foul merchant. He's constantly diving, constantly exaggerating. He kind of fits every cliche that every person that hates Argentine soccer says about what Argentine soccer is. And it's like, there are no rules here. I have razor blades in my pockets. Like, that's Giuliano Simeone. And if he has raised his kid to be this like this play at the edge of the rules, dark arts merchant. I think Giuliano Simeone is only 19 years old too, or something like that. I don't think there's any chance that he doesn't take this tournament seriously. So, and it's also the type of thing, like, I think the teams that are most dangerous in this tournament are the teams that do need to win something. I don't think Atletico needs to win something, but if they can put all the effort that they constantly put in to being right there with Barcelona, right there with Real Madrid, and most of the time coming up a little bit short, if they win this tournament, it should mean something to them.
Well, and I would think that there's also an element of the money. It's real money for everybody, but then there's levels of what real money constitutes, right? And I would think for a team like Atletico, which doesn't have the global superstars, which seemingly doesn't have endless pockets of wealth to just keep funneling into the club, like getting a 9-digit payday is a pretty significant achievement. Like from just a pure financial perspective, like that's going to fund some real, if they were to win this tournament, that would seemingly fund, have a very real impact on the way that they're run.
I think it gives them significant flexibility. Like Charles is talking about how they, over the course of Simeone's tenure, have slowly tried to evolve their style. And they have to a certain extent, because before they were pretty much like, we don't want the ball at all. Like at the beginning of Simeone's tenure, like we don't want the ball. And now they're actually a team that, unless they're playing like a European elite, they can dictate play. They will dictate play. But they've also had like a couple of misses in the transfer market. I think most famously over the recent years, the Joao Felix transfer in from Portugal, and they eventually had to loan him out. And that was like their one big shot money wise. I think they ended up paying close to 100 million euro for him. And like he was barely playing when he was on loan in Italy at the end of the year. So for them to get like a cash infusion, it might give them, the next time that they have the money to go out there and really get a player, they might have the ability to get two players. And maybe one of them ends up being Joao Felix again, but then another one ends up being like another Antoine Griezmann, who they were able to kind of like make some money off that by selling him to Barcelona, and then Barcelona had to offload him back. And so he's still one of their best players, but they have to find some new players to bring in, because Griezmann's not going to be able to stay at this level forever. They got a couple of other players that are maybe playing on not quite borrowed time, but the next great Atletico player beyond just Julian Alvarez, that's turning out to be a steal for Manchester City getting him. But they need the next level of those kind of like 22, 23, 24-year-old players to come in to inherit the core.
And there's the bigger picture here is that if you're trying to do what Atleti are trying to do, which is break into sort of an oligarchy in a sense, right? And really be able to compete sustainably toe for toe against FC Barcelona and Real Madrid, you have to build a financial base through a combination of investment and player sales and sponsorships, facilities, to be able to get to that level and stay there without sort of getting into the financial fair play consequences, right? It's almost like there's an element of baked in superiority that you have to overcome. And so I think this is real money for them. And I would imagine just in terms of the mentality and the spirit that they're giving this a long look, because again, this is, not something that they can take for granted the way that maybe Real Madrid or an Inter Milan might, just in sort of reflexively.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that's interesting is PSG and Atletico play the first game of this group. So kind of like the decisive game, the team that's most likely to win this group is going to be identified 90 minutes after this group starts. PSG has played like one serious game in the last 6 weeks, and it was the Champions League final, because they put away the French league so early, and they have enough depth to where they were able to rotate during the league and the final stages of the cup. Atletico, they haven't played a serious game since like round 36 in Spain. That's just when their kind of title quest and league quest ended. I can imagine Diego Simeone during that time kind of saying, hey, staff, we've got 3 weeks to let these players regroup and then build back up, because we want to take this seriously. Whereas PSG is probably like, we just won Champions League. Go away for a week and enjoy yourself. And then when they come back, it's like, okay, are they even going to be motivated to build back up? If I were PSG, I'd be like, I don't want to build our players back up. All we're going to do is get them hurt. Like we're going to ask them to do too much. They're going to be traveling all over the United States. It's going to be hot. Like, no, these guys are going to play some, but we've won what we want to win.
Yeah, I would say that the other thing, if I'm looking at this, I would assume that PSG is just going to give most of their starters the group stage off, I would think. I mean, there's just like a practical element to this. They were playing 2 weeks ago. They were playing a very important game 2 weeks ago. Are they really going to ask guys to just come roll off the, I mean, essentially they're going to have to roll guys off the beach as it is, you would think.
Yeah.
Because
a lot of their roster was active in Nations League. I mean, not a ton, but a lot of them were. But then there are other guys that, like, yeah, they, to the extent that they will be active, over the next couple of weeks training for this tournament. Like, they certainly got enough time off as a reward.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Is there, so obviously the group, the thing I'm most interested by in this group, selfishly, is just whether or not Sounders fans end up showing up. Now, we sort of talked about the realities of this, where the pricing for this tournament was I think very aggressive, and I think maybe even exploring the outer reaches of what the American consumer is willing to pay for elite soccer. But as we get closer, I am really interested to see if Sounders fans, if Seattle sports fans, if Seattle soccer fans, if people from outside the area start to flock to these games, in part because the prices now are pretty reasonable. Like, you can get great seats for certainly the Botafogo game. You can get great seats for, $60-$70. For a lot of these games that don't involve the Sounders, you can get great seats for even cheaper than that. Now, the PSG and Atletico games are still pretty expensive, but this is also, I believe, the first time that either one of these teams have played. Well, certainly the first time they played in Seattle. Apparently, PSG played in Eugene a few years ago. I totally didn't realize that, but I actually just talked to the PSG Seattle fan club president, and he said, yeah, they went and played in Eugene a few years ago. But other than that, they don't come out to the West Coast very often. But I think, I don't know.
They have that huge stadium down there in Eugene. That makes sense.
Yeah, but seemingly not wide enough for real soccer, though.
Yeah,
but I guess that
also
matter.
Makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense.
But yeah, I mean, I just, as the cynical part of me is sort of enjoying the seeing sort of the crumbling of some of this, but there is also a part of me, like, I want soccer to succeed. I want Seattle fans to show out well. And so I am really hopeful that people eventually come around and go to these games, especially if they don't have to pay an arm and a leg to get there. I don't know if there's really a question in there. But I guess it's a good way to maybe close this out. Is there sort of a closing message that you think is worth imparting on people who were maybe on the fence about whether or not they want to spend their time worrying about this tournament? Or actually, before that, what would you? Let's rewind. What do you guys constitute a successful tournament for the Sounders specifically? Obviously, getting out of the group would be almost like winning the tournament in a lot of ways. But what's the minimum? What would you think you want to see from this? What realistically do you think the Sounders can do in this thing?
Play well and don't get more injuries.
Yeah,
like just avoid a 7-1. Just avoid a 5-0. Like 3-1s where you're fighting, where all 90 minutes matter. Like, go out there and make your hard work pay off. Take these games seriously, but also, like, I think they have a game on the 28th of June, 5 days after the last group game or something like that. So it's like, look, realistically, we can't ignore the entire calendar for these 3 games. So Seattle, a team that hasn't had great injury luck this year, let's hope the next three games can be a little bit luckier.
270 competitive minutes is what you're saying constitutes a successful.
Yes, 270 minutes that actually matter.
Right. Yeah.
It's much the same for me that be competitive, take this opportunity. I mean, for all the politics and all the Sturm and Drang, like, they earn the right to be here. This is a huge honor. Whatever we may think of the powers that be, like, there's always been these kind of reservations. There's always something imperfect or flawed or compromised about, modern capitalistic sports, for lack of a better term. The Sounders did something that still no MLS team has done in the modern era. This is the chance to show something, show themselves as individuals, as a group, and to feel what it's like. And I hope that fans get a sense of that too. And I totally respect that people will vote with their feet according to their conscience. And but it's a great time of year weather-wise up there. These are teams that just don't come here for fully, truly competitive occasions like this. I hope it becomes an infomercial for Seattle soccer, in the stands, on the field, the way the organization carries itself, because it took so much steady, relentless, dogged competence to get to this point. So, don't throw it away now.
I mean,
yeah, actually,
for me, I've just seen too many of these, when we used to regularly have summer friendlies in Seattle, and Seattle would sometimes be involved in them, and you get to see the Sounders go out there in a meaningless game and just get roasted by Manchester United. And I just don't think any of the Sounders' identity needs to be tied to any of these games. I think that ideally, like Charles is saying, this would be a way for people around the world to kind of recognize Seattle for what it is. But Seattle's going to be what it is no matter what happens in these next 3 games. So I would tell people in any city, just like, hey, if you feel like going to the game, just go to the game. Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. If the morning of you're like, you know what, let's do that. Just go to the game. And if you don't go to the game, that's fine too. But this is not something where it's going to be a league commitment. You don't have to be a fan. This is a show. In a lot of these places, this is a show. If you want to go see the show, go see the show.
I will say one of the things that's sort of refreshing is in this age of, I feel like walk-ups have become a thing of the past. That's just does not how people sport anymore. It's not really a thing that's part of the sporting culture these days. And I will say that that's kind of what I find intriguing about the way this is lining up, is that I do think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to walk to that day, decide I'm going to go downtown. I'm going to buy a ticket and I'll sit wherever I sit, and it'll probably be a nice day, and it'll probably be a fun match. And you might see some of the best soccer players you're ever going to see in person. Playing these games. So I don't know. I'm actually weirdly, I really like these kickoff times for the most part. Like, I'm actually really looking forward to totally random. And I say that as someone whose schedule lines up very neatly to go to these games. But I don't know. I'm ready for this to start. I'm looking forward to writing about this tournament in a way that is more interesting. Like, it's so much of the coverage that I've done of this tournament is just about backroom stuff that is not really about the soccer on the field. And I'm looking forward to just being able to write about some actual soccer. I think
I would love to read stuff from you guys that's just like, hey, this is the reality of trying to start something new. And even though this competition isn't new, the way they're doing this competition is new. So
it is.
Just when you're on the ground, it's going to be a weird energy at Lumen, man. Like, it's going to be preseason football, preseason Seahawks energy in there. It's not going to be like an MLS soccer game that we've become used to, because there's such fan-driven environments at this point. This is going to be so different. It's like, okay, well, if this is day one of the new Club World Cup, what do we have, and where do we go from here?
Yeah. So, with all that said, thank you guys I loved part of what I love about this Sounder at Heart project that we're doing right now is I get to find ways to connect with writers and journalists and voices that I find interesting, and I can give them a little money and I can give them a platform, and we can hopefully make something people want to consume. And it was really awesome for me to get to connect with you guys. I'm glad we were able to do this. And hopefully people find this our whole coverage compelling and interesting. And I wanted to also say thank you to my sister, Marty O'Shan, realtor in Seattle, for sponsoring this segment and our Club World Cup coverage going forward. So with all that said, this is No Sadietas, part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network, and we will catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.